The toast was supposed to be sweet. The kind people clapped for without thinking. But when my father lifted his glass and thanked the boys who carried the legacy, something in me went cold. I'd heard versions of that dismissal my whole life. But standing there in that glittering hall full of people who believed his every word, it hit differently. I watched him grin for the cameras, his arm draped proudly around my brother's, while I lingered at the edge of the room like a misplaced coat. Nobody noticed when I stepped forward. Nobody cared when I placed a small envelope in his hand and said, "From the kid you never bothered to see." I didn't wait for his reaction. I just walked out, heels tapping down the marble like a ticking clock. Outside, the night air tasted metallic, like the moment before a storm. And as I reached my car, I let myself remember being a little girl sitting by his desk, trying to impress a man who only seemed impressed by people who reminded him of himself. I remembered how he'd laugh and tousle my brother's hair while telling me I was better suited for something gentle. That was the moment I learned affection in my family came with conditions, and I hadn't met them. Over time, I mastered silence, watching him sell ideas with a smile and bury lies under charm. I kept hoping that if I worked harder, shined brighter, he'd finally look up. But when he skipped my graduation for a lunch meeting and then poured money into my brother's doomed app like it was a noble crusade, something in me cracked. Joining his company was my last attempt to be enough. Instead, I found myself sorting schedules and fetching coffee with a fancy title slapped on top. One night, while finishing a report in his office, I opened a file I shouldn't have. A file where my future was already decided. Busy work. Marginalized. Slowly erased. His initials sat at the bottom like a verdict. Something inside me went very still. I didn't quit. I didn't yell. I simply paid attention. And what I saw beneath the polished speeches and charitable donations was a maze of hidden money, cooked reports, and shady transfers stamped with my brother's names. He thought he'd hidden everything perfectly. And honestly, he almost had dots, so I started pulling the threads. Quietly, methodically, I sent anonymous tips, spaced out over weeks. Never enough to trigger alarm, but enough to plant doubts where they needed to grow. I gathered proof and tucked it away, waiting for the moment the truth would matter most. When the company announced his big retirement celebration, a night meant to crown him the titan he pretended to be, I knew that was it. The envelope I handed him held a flash drive packed with years of buried misconduct and a simple note he wouldn't understand until it was too late. By the time he tore it open, I was already parked across the street, watching the party glow like a snow globe full of people who didn't know it was about to shatter. I couldn't hear his outburst, but I saw the way his shoulders caved and how my brothers rushed to him like confused children. Within 2 days, headlines exploded. Accounts froze. Auditors descended. The company's spotless image peeled away like cheap paint. He called me over and over, his voice in the lone voicemail shaking with fear and disbelief. "You don't know what you've done." But I did. I'd spent my whole life knowing exactly what he never bothered to see. People ask whether I feel guilty. I don't. Guilt is for people who were welcomed and loved and then lost their place. I was never offered one. I didn't break him out of anger. I simply put the weight back in his hands. The weight he spent years placing on everyone but himself. The company has a new name now. Mine. His old office sits dark and empty, a shrine to a man who built his throne on lies. And me? I finally sleep like someone who stopped begging to be chosen. They call it revenge. I call it reclaiming what should have been mine all along.